back at Chambers? You're sort of where the mayor was, that was good. I'm just gonna have to do one more test, Wyatt.
All right, testing audio.
Or no,
testing
just like in the pews. No. All right, Wyatt, would you mind one more test?
Sure, testing audio. Testing audio. Can you hear me?
Okay,
Can
we're
you hear me?
good. Thanks, Wyatt.
All right, thank you.
We will test this mic to make sure the live stream is working. Good luck, Charlie.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Monday, March 14th regular meeting of the Falls Church City Council. Before we get started, I wonder if there are any volunteers to help us lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I do have some Falls Church pins for anyone who's interested. Okay, all right. Why don't you guys come on forward to the microphone? And we're all going to stand, and the flag is behind us here, okay? So we'll go ahead on your mark, okay? Whenever you're ready. You guys ready?
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and as I promised, anyone who joined us in the Pledge of Allegiance down front, come on up forward. You get a Falls Church pen if you'd like. Did you get a Falls Church pen either? Did you ever lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, well, that's probably why. There you go. All right, there's one for you, too. All right, there's one for you. There's one for you. Come on up, too. You. Here.
Sorry, thank you. He's shy.
All right. I like that outfit, man. Could you bring one of the kids in the blue back there? Right over there. Behind Dan in the green. Debbie. One for you too. All right. Okay. Anyone else need a pen? Anyone else in the audience want a pen? All right. Let's go ahead and do roll call if we would, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Ms. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Hardy?
Here.
Ms. Leon?
Here.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
And Mayor Tarter?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have a motion regarding the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the meeting agenda.
All right, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. So we do have a few proclamations tonight, some very important proclamations. The first is a resolution showing City Council and the city's support for the Ukrainian people. And Mr. Snyder, I believe, will do the honors for that. So, Mr. Snyder?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is, as you indicated, this is entitled a resolution supporting the Ukrainian people. Whereas on February 24, 2022, the Russian government launched a military assault on the sovereign democratic nation of Ukraine, and whereas Russian attacks on residential areas of Ukraine's municipalities have forced the evacuation of millions of civilians, and whereas continued attacks have killed and injured an ever-mounting number of Ukrainian people, and whereas Falls Church is the home and the place of employment of many Ukrainian American people who are suffering hardship and grief because of this devastating war, and whereas the City Council mourns these devastating losses, but also commends the courage and resolve of the Ukrainian people. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council and the City of Falls Church, Virginia, that 1, the City Council of Falls Church states its support for Ukrainian municipal officials and their citizens in their darkest hour, and 2, the City Council reiterates its commitment with our entire community to be welcoming of all refugees, including those from Ukraine, and asks the city residents, and local nonprofits to consider how we might help those seeking refuge from this war.
So we have a resolution, I believe, on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, I'm just going to do a voice vote, if that's all right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Anyone else like to say anything else? Ms. Hardy?
Thank you to Mr. Snyder for taking the lead on this. I think we have a great nonprofit called Welcoming Falls Church that is answering that call. They're actually organizing a cross-functional meeting, I think it's next Tuesday, to talk about how we can start housing refugees, whether it's from Ukraine or otherwise, in the community. So I think it's going to pull together school staff, city staff, and other nonprofits across the region. So hopefully city staff will be a part of that conversation as well.
All right, thank you. So the City Council, as the people of Falls Church as well, stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Ukraine in our steadfast support. Okay, let's move on to our next proclamation, which is declaring March Women's History Month. And Ms. Conley has been instrumental in both instituting this, the march, as well as a number of other critical events like this. And so she's going to do the honors tonight in reading the resolution of the proclamation. So, Ms. Conley, thank you for your fine work.
Thanks, Mayor Charter. Before I start, this proclamation is going to announce the 5 honorees who are selected as Grand Marshals and also 23 young women of action. And I don't think anyone in the audience is here for that. But the girls will be recognized in school tomorrow, and when I read the names of the individuals, please share your support with them. There'll be a further announcement in the Falls Church News Press on Thursday. Whereas women have made lasting contributions to the growth and strength of the United States, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the City of Falls Church in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, and whereas women led the way in securing suffrage and equal opportunity for all, and in creating a more fair and just society, and whereas women play prominent roles in the local history of Falls Church, which has been home to noted abolitionists, educators, business owners, volunteers, and visionary leaders. And whereas there are many opportunities to learn about women's history in Falls Church, and Women's History Month is a great opportunity to recommit to learning about the strong women who built our community. And the 5th Women's History Walk, presented by Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation, the Women's History Group, and the elected women of Falls Church, is an opportunity for citizens of all ages to learn about the female leaders in Falls Church's history and the women who are currently leading the city into the future. And whereas the 5th Women's History Walk will take place on Sunday, May 1st, 2022, and Sally Cole, Cindy Mester, Ruth Rogers, Edie Smolinski, and Derica Wilson will be recognized as honorary Grand Marshals. And whereas the Women's History Walk will honor 23 middle and high school young women of action, and whereas all residents are charged with carrying on the legacy of these women by making a positive difference in the City of Falls Church and the world.
Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Women's History Month in the City of Falls Church, and call on all residents to observe this month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities, including participating in the Falls Church Women's History Walk on Sunday, March 1st, 2022.
So there is actually one woman being honored who is in the room tonight, Cindy
I
Mester.
noticed.
So let's
I
give Cindy
noticed.
Mester a round of applause.
There she is, and then we've got 4 women up here on the dais as well. So lots to celebrate. So thank you for all your work in organizing and promoting this event.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on now to a proclamation declaring March as Social Worker Month in the City of Falls Church. And Miss Leon is going to go ahead and do the honors.
Sure, happy to. Whereas the social work profession for decades has been dedicated to improving human well-being and enhancing the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable among us, particularly during the global pandemic. And whereas this year's Social Work Month theme, The Time is Right for Social Work, embodies how social workers rose to meet the most pressing challenges of all of our lifetimes, the COVID-19 pandemic, even as our nation continues to grapple with systemic racism, economic inequality, global warming, and other crises. And whereas social workers are the largest group of mental health care providers in the United States and work daily to help people, whether in person or remotely, overcome substance abuse disorders and mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety, provide group home services, serve the elderly and most vulnerable among us. And whereas social workers have always helped people overcome issues such as death and grief and helped people and communities recover from increasing natural disasters such as fires, hurricanes, and earthquakes brought on by climate change. And whereas social workers have helped this nation live up to its values by successfully advocating for equal rights for all, including Black, Indigenous, people of color, those who are LGBTQA, religious groups, and others. And whereas the social work profession is one of the fastest growing careers in the United States, with more than 715,000 social workers today and nearly 800,000 professionals expected to be employed as social workers by 2028. And whereas social workers have continued to push for changes that have made our society a better place to live, including a livable wage, improved workplace safety, and social safety net programs that help ameliorate poverty, hunger, and homelessness. And whereas social workers possess the necessary expertise to assist our nation in some of its most demanding concerns, including their health and well-being, not only during the pandemic, but at all times, ensuring equal rights, improved health care and mental health care for all, and immigration reform. And whereas social workers work in all facets of our society to meet people, no matter where their circumstance, and empower them to live to their fullest potential.
Now, therefore, I, David Tarter, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Social Work Month in the City of Falls Church and call upon all members of the community to join in celebration and support of the social work profession. So before we move on, also, I wonder if we might observe a moment of silence for Aaron Messner, formerly of the EDA, and also a local entrepreneur and business owner of Lemon Lane, mother, family, woman, and an integral part of this community who passed away recently. So if you'd be so kind, please join me in a moment of silence on Aaron's behalf. Thank you. Also, just another note as relates to the Ukrainian situation, the Northern Virginia Regional Commission is actually starting a coat drive, a coat blanket, glove, and scarf drive, and some more details of that will be forthcoming in the very near future, but we hope to have boxes for drop-off of those items in the City of Falls Church in the very near future so that they can be sent over to the people of Ukraine. Lastly, we have a birthday yesterday, and as you know, the custom is that the rookie or new person on council will sing happy birthday to them. So it's Debbie Hiscott's birthday was yesterday, so we want to wish her a happy birthday and then turn it over to you, Caroline, for a, so let's do it together. How about that? How about a quick happy birthday? Everybody ready in the audience? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Debbie. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much. That's very kind.
Right. She obviously enjoyed that.
May I just
All right.
add one piece of business?
Yes.
As well. The Falls Church Education Foundation, my day job hat on, also has a family assistance fund and working to support the Ukrainian refugee families who have arrived in Falls Church and Greater Falls Church. So if anybody's interested in talking to me about that, I'd be delighted to talk to you. How we're supporting our social workers, supporting Ukrainian families in Falls Church. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to oaths of office. Any oaths of office to administer, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have Leanne Berthum for the City Employee Review Board.
All right. Well, thank you for your service. We certainly appreciate that.
Found it.
Okay.
So just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Leanne Berthum,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a member of the City Employee Review Board,
as a member of the City Employee Review Board,
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Thank you, and you're ready to assume your duties with the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and you've
Thank
earned
you very
a
much.
pin too if you want one, not just your kids. So come on down and receive our congratulations and this nice little pin here as well. Okay, let's move on to receipt of public comment. Madam Clerk, will you read the written comments for us? Yep.
I will. We had one comment on the budget. The Environmental Sustainability Council's Energy Transition Subcommittee requested funding for an additional full-time staff member to support environmental programs, a consultant to help meet greenhouse gas emission goals, and program support for environmental outreach programming, infrastructure, and data reporting. We had a number of pieces of correspondence from regarding traffic, stormwater on Lincoln Avenue, and other safety issues. The following residents of Lincoln Avenue signed a letter accompanied by a survey of neighborhood priorities to encourage the city to continue to make progress on safer and greener Lincoln Avenue and to address safety and stormwater issues. That was signed by Andrew Olison, Catherine Labetti, John Bell, Lakshmi Noren, Sarah Tarpgard, Andrew Tarpgard, Susan Martin, Diane Zanetti, Paul Thomas, Jennifer Thomas, Arthur Agan, Matt Reese, Christy Swinney, Gabriel Swinney, Mark Quave, Christina Quave, Sonia Urbaum, Scott Urbaum, Hannah Jordan, Jeff Jordan, Don Taylor, Julie Meehan, Connie Keith, Alistair Keith, Bob Martin, Mary Beth Kennedy, Scott Kennedy, Peter Laub, Jennifer Nowlin, Jim Layton, Marjorie Hoffman, John Walker, Mariette Johnson, Suzanne Auerhan, Arnie Auerhan, John Retzky, and Robert Bennington. Andrew Olison also provided additional comments and wrote today to thank Mr. Shields for his response and asked that he also address speeding in the neighborhood, which he reports has increased after repaving. The following wrote additional letters in support of the previous letter and regarding safety issues in the Lincoln Avenue area. Mr. Shields followed up with a number of the correspondence, and those letters came from, emails came from John Bell, Tamara Gordon, who wrote regarding pedestrian safety at the East Dorchester and Great Falls Street crossing at Lincoln Park, Catherine Labetti, Christina New, Jenny Nowlin, and Peter Laub, John Retzky. Margaret Schwartz wrote that to let you know that not all Lincoln Avenue residents were in favor of speed bumps. And Ron and Catherine Sechrist wrote regarding pedestrian safety at the East Dorchester and Great Falls Street crossing at Lincoln Park. We had some comments on one city center proposed project from the Chamber of Commerce and the Village Preservation and Improvement Society. We also heard from the Historical Commission. The city boards that we heard from were the Historical Commission and the Urban Forestry Commission. Individuals wrote as follows. Nader Baruch wrote that he was extremely concerned about the density and building heights of the proposed project. Wynn Singleton wrote to oppose the project, citing concerns about the impacts of residential density. Kathleen Thompson wrote to oppose the One City Center proposal for a traffic circle at Maple Avenue and Annandale Road. In other correspondence, the Environmental Sustainability Council asked the city to prioritize bike lanes and micromobility infrastructure in support of sustainability, accessibility, safety, economics, and small-town character. Andrew Combs, a local student, wrote about an incident in which he was almost hit by a speeding car and suggested that photo enforcement of speeding violations might be a solution to speeding. Patrick Nowlin forwarded information about legislation recently adopted by Montgomery County regarding clearing sidewalks of snow as an idea to promote sidewalk clearing in the city. Sandra Tarpinian asked that the city consider encouraging the use of native trees, shrubs, and herbaceous plants as a sustainable solution to managing stormwater on residential properties. Chris Michelli, representing the Whittier Park Homeowners Association, wrote regarding sidewalk conditions in Whittier Park. And the Village Preservation and Improvement Society wrote with concerns about litter in the city and provided recommendations for litter prevention. And those were our written comments. We don't have anybody signed up to come in remotely, and the mayor does have some folks that are here to speak in person. I did have one email stating they couldn't make it and asked if I could relay the message from that. Would you like me to do that?
Sure.
And that was from Rebecca Tax from Clarendon's. And she wrote about the perimeter fence that Insight Development installed at the project today, and has a concern about that the curb cut allowing left turn onto Park Place from the west had not been installed yet. And she stated that prevents folks coming from the west from entering her place of business. She said she's grateful that the city negotiated access to the Kaiser parking lot and ordered signs to direct westbound drivers there, and noted that the signs were unfortunately not yet installed. So she's not here because she's at Meridian Softball's home opener, and she says, "Go Mustangs."
All right, thank you very much. And so we have 3 folks who've signed up to speak. If there's anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak, you're certainly more than welcome to as well. We just ask that you fill out a speaker slip, write your name and address on the slip and hand it to the clerk, and she'll hand them to me. And then when you do get up to speak, if you would be so kind as to state your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes. So we have 3 speakers at present, and if I apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. But our first speaker is Layla Cosbelt. Are you here, Layla? There you go. Come on down. Are you the other Layla?
Yeah.
All right, double trouble. Here we come. Yes, please, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Layla Brooks, and I live on Great Falls Street. I am a 6th grader at MEH.
Good evening. My name is Layla Cosbelt, and I also live on Great Falls Street and am a 6th grader at MEH.
We are here to talk about our experiences using the crosswalk every morning and afternoon.
Every day, we are required to use the crosswalk to get to our bus stop. In the past 2 weeks, we started paying closer attention to traffic. Most mornings, 3 to 4 cars drive straight through the crosswalk without seeming to notice us waiting to cross the street.
Sometimes, even school buses drive straight through as we are trying to cross to the bus stop. Many mornings, some cars even speed up to try and beat us.
A couple years ago, in my front yard, a speeding car drove over the sidewalk and our street lamp and crashed into our tree shortly after I walked home from the bus stop, and I have pictures from that. So, these.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
We are middle school students, but I often think about if my little sister's Oak Street Elementary bus required her to use the crosswalk. This makes me nervous, and I want to find a solution to encourage traffic to slow down and drivers to pay closer attention.
Thank you for considering a solution.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. You all are very articulate, and we thank you for coming out and seeing us. We have one more speaker who also, I think, wants to talk to the same issue, Tamara Gordon.
Thank you very much. My name is Tamara Gordon. This is Davis Gordon.
All
We live
right.
at 607 Oak Haven Drive. And I am joined here by 9 of my neighbors with the support of many others who couldn't be here tonight. And I'm here to follow up on emails that you have all gotten from me and that we've exchanged over the past couple of weeks about the situation at the intersection of Dorchester and Great Falls at the entrance to Lincoln Park. And in respect for your time, I am the only one of us who's going to talk other than the 2 awesome girls. I want to express my gratitude to all of you for responding so quickly and so favorably to our concerns. Everyone who lives near Lincoln Park or who plays at Lincoln Park has had a close call with cars failing to slow down or stop at the crosswalk. And it was even worse before the city put that crosswalk in. Not only is that an extremely popular park for the youngest children, it is also a bus stop, meaning it is constantly busy and especially during peak commute hours. I know that you're all well aware of the challenges at this intersection and have tried many things, including speed limit signs, arrows, trimming the shrubs, positioning a police officer near the park. One piece of evidence of the futility of the recent efforts is that there's a sign that's supposed to be in the middle of the street that says, "It is the law to stop for pedestrians." It has been hit by speeding cars so many times that it ended up on the sidewalk and has just been taken away. The positioning of Lincoln Park and this crosswalk so close to the light at Great Falls and Lincoln means that drivers are frequently focused on making the light, and they don't see tiny kids trying to cross the street. The neighbors are extremely grateful for the note from City Manager Wyatt Shields indicating the plan is to move forward with a flashing beacon-style solution. And we just wanted to make sure to tell you how grateful we are that this appears to be on a fast track, but also we want to make sure that in addition to this pedestrian-activated flashing beacon, that there will also be curb bump outs to provide visibility and safety to pedestrians. There are already lines on the asphalt indicating where those curb bumps could go. And we believe that if you want to go around town, the intersection of Oak and West at the base of Mount Daniel is a superb example of how this would work by our park. We understand that there is a larger engineering study being done related to Lincoln. And we believe that the crosswalk on the other side of Lincoln Park should get a similar treatment. But we feel great urgency that this project should move forward and not be bogged down by a longer-term process for that whole long street. There's just great urgency because of the bus stops. The risk won't entirely go away with a flashing beacon, but it will give the children and their caregivers a signal that they need to pause and be mindful of traffic. It will elevate the pedestrians to make them more visible to drivers, and it will give drivers another visual cue that, in fact, they really do need to stop. I have 30 more seconds, I promise. Many of us also believe that an elevated crosswalk or speed table may be necessary to truly reduce dangerous speeds and inattention on Great Falls and Lincoln, but we understand that those require engineering studies and petitions, and it's a more involved process. So in summary, we are grateful for all that you are doing to address pedestrian safety concerns in Falls Church City, and we are eager to work with you to reduce the risks around Lincoln Park. And you know how to find us.
All
So
right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I speak for my colleagues on council in noting that we're all very sympathetic to the situation there. I'm sure you heard from many of us. Mr. Shields, our city manager, is on the phone. I don't know if you're going to participate in this meeting or just observing, but if you are, maybe during your county manager comments, you could address what we've just heard about the crosswalk. And I know you've put out some correspondence and communicated with a number of us over the weekend, but I might just ask you during the county or city manager's comments, if you are to make some, that you could address what's going on there and what might come to pass, hopefully in the near future as well.
Yes, Mayor Tarter, I will plan to do so. Thank you.
Okay, so if you could just stick around, I think you'll hear more in just a few minutes. In the meantime, let's move on, if there's no further public comment, to council requests. Are there any council requests? Okay, well, that was quick. I think we're now on to Mr. Shields and I'm sorry, Ms. Connolly.
I'd just like to know what the response is to Rebecca Tax and her concern about Clarendon's. Is anything being done about that? That is something we started talking about when we were meeting in the community center because this building was under construction and now push has come to shove. So I'm just wondering if there's any response from the city on when that's going to happen with that curb cut.
So
Yes, I will plan to address that in the manager's comments as well.
Okay, time for the city manager's comments. So, Mr. Shields, thank you for joining us remotely. We know you're on holiday right now, so thank you for spending time with us during your time away. But if you could, please give us your city manager's report.
Well, thank you, Mayor Tarter, members of council. Thank you for letting me participate remotely. I do have a number of things to update the council and community on, and I'll try to go through them in a pretty rapid fire manner. But if I could start my comments just by expressing my appreciation, and I'm just so pleased that Cindy Mester is being recognized as the leader she is by Falls Church during Women's History Month. And I just personally, I can't imagine working this job without Cindy. And basically everything good that the city government has been involved in the past 17 years, Cindy has been at the center of it and helping to lead it. And so congratulations, Cindy, on that well-deserved recognition. A couple of things to note. One, assessments for real estate. We are wrapping up the assessment process right now. The city, as the council knows, the city has a new assessor, but we've also taken this year to switch our assessment software away from ProVal and to the Vision platform. That's the reason for the delay this year. We normally have them out about a month prior to right now. We anticipate that those will go into the mail in the next week. We'll also have a press release that will go out this week that provides the details for those. As council anticipated, based on our discussions back in the fall, one of the key features of assessment growth this year will be increases in the residential sector, both single-family homes, townhouses, condos, and commercial rental properties, apartments. Those are assessed values are all increasing, and commercial valuations are relatively flat. And so, as the council discussed last fall, the council did direct that there would be options for reducing the real estate tax rate. We're working very hard on the budget right now, and in our press release, we did intend to note that fact that the council has provided that direction so that residents are aware of that and aware of the budget process where that will be discussed, and ultimately the city council will make the decision on what the tax rate would be. But a tax rate reduction in light of those increased assessments is part of the planning for this year. A third note, speed cameras. The General Assembly has allowed speed cameras in school zones and in construction zones. And the City Council has been very interested in pursuing that. The city's police department does have a consultant that will be coming in. The consultant actually works with a company that does install these cameras, but they're doing a basic feasibility study in terms of potential location for those speed cameras under the Virginia law, as well as doing some speed counts so that we can have the data to determine where those cameras properly should go and what problems we'll be trying to solve in terms of public safety improvements with such speed cameras. Transitioning to Lincoln Avenue, as was noted, we have gotten significant correspondence from residents asking for improvements on Lincoln Avenue to improve safety as well as flooding and stormwater concerns. The City Council appropriated funds in December using a share of the America Rescue Plan dollars. The city's also pursued some additional grants to augment that. And Cindy Mester, as our lead legislative director, also had been working with Congressman Don Byers' office through their Virginia Jobs Act portal. And we will be getting an additional grant in the amount of $400,000 that was just announced this week to augment the dollars that the City Council has already allocated to the Greening of Lincoln project. I will note that staff has put out an RFP for an engineering firm. We're interviewing those engineering firms right now, expect to make that hire soon. And when we do, we'll engage with residents on the preferred solutions. And the intent then would be to work through a decision-making process with residents and then finalize plans and then construction. So we're hopeful that that process will play out over the summer. And so all the residents have been informed of that, that have contacted us, and we'll be communicating more on that once the engineering firm has been hired. And then lastly, on Lincoln, as was noted earlier, we have gotten correspondence on the Dorchester and Great Falls mid-block pedestrian crossing. Staff intends to take a sort of an administrative solution to the CACT at its meeting in April to request the use of neighborhood traffic calming dollars, which the CACT works with staff to sort of prioritize the use of those dollars to install the pedestrian activated flashing beacons and other potential improvements that we'll discuss with the CACT. There was the request to do the other mid-block crossing on Lincoln, and so we'll consider that as well. And I think the only sort of determinant on that is if that would interfere with the larger planning. But we don't want the Dorchester situation to get slowed down by the larger Lincoln project. But if we can do the Lincoln project mid-block crossing, we'll do that as well. A note on Broad and Washington. So as council is aware, the fencing has gone up around the Broad and Washington construction project. Demolition activity is scheduled to begin this week and will carry on for the next many weeks into the future, into the late spring and early summer. The Insight development team is going to install a temporary left turn signal onto Park Place so that traffic that is heading southbound on Washington Street can make that easy movement turning left into Park Place to access the city parking lot that is behind Clarendon's, Thompson's Italian, and the State Theater. There is, about a 30-day gap between the fencing going up and the installation of that signal. We've been trying to compress that as much as possible. But that is the state of play as of right now. It'll be probably late April before that signal is fully inspected and approved, once it's been installed and ready to be turned on and used. The city's EDO office did work to get the parking at Kaiser on every weeknight. That's a great contribution by Kaiser, I think, to the well-being of the entire commercial district, and we are working to promote that as a good parking option for those three businesses as well. Two more things to report. The West Falls project. We're going to talk about that in more detail tonight. The city attorney is going to walk the council and the community through kind of the major steps that we'll be undertaking through the end of this month and the month of April to finalize the contractual documents for the West Falls
Wyatt, you just froze up.
that the developer is planning.
Wyatt, we dropped you for a few seconds there.
You're okay. You're back. You were talking,
Okay.
but your mouth wasn't moving. But
Can
it
you
looks
hear me
like
now?
You're back. Yep. You're good.
Okay. I'm almost done, so hopefully the computer can make it through this last 30 seconds. The key thing for the school community to be aware of and the community as a whole to be aware of is that the Falls Church Gateway partners are planning to remobilize on the 10-acre site at West Falls to complete the demolition work that was largely completed several months ago. They'll be moving sort of the big pile of some of the broken up concrete. They'll be taking out some of the remaining concrete slabs, and they also most visibly will begin taking down the trees that are on the site. So we'll be working with the developer and the school administration just to make sure that the public is aware of that. And of course, we've had now years of planning for this, and so we'll be implementing the construction management plan that lays out where trucks can go, where they can't go, where the safe pathways are for students to walk to school, etc. The last thing I will note is that staff is planning Memorial Day festivities for this year's Memorial Day. We are planning the parade. We're planning a in-person events as well as the ceremony at the Veterans Memorial Garden and Falls Church. So I did want council to be aware of that. We are happy to get any comments or thoughts by City Council as we're planning that. But generally speaking, as an outdoor event, we are planning to have a Memorial Day that looks familiar to people who have experienced it through the many years. That's my last thing to report on tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Shields. Any questions or comments, Vice Mayor Hardy?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shields. So starting with Lincoln, there are a couple things I just wanted to confirm and follow up on. So besides the flashing beacons at one or both crosswalks, do we think we're actually going to do concrete bump outs as well to help kind of pedestrians be more visible on both sides before crossing? Do we have money in the budget for that?
So in discussing it with Mr. Bradley, the Director of Public Mind, well, we would need to take it from the neighborhood traffic calming program budget for this year. And if the CACT is in general agreement with that, then we would have funding sufficient for that. And so the Oak Street at Northwest intersection is a model that I think, there'll probably be some changes to it, but I think that's the basic idea.
That's terrific. Thank you. And I know that Chief Gavin had kind of issued kind of a top-down request to her staff to step up enforcement on speeding and other traffic infractions. And I personally have noticed it, but I think the Lincoln residents would appreciate more police presence while we wait for this work to happen. My third thing on Lincoln is I think an idea that I had floated, which I know other kind of advocates are big fans of, is actually testing out the idea of a four-way stop at Great Falls and Lincoln. So I've heard comments that a lot of people speed through the light. And so I think the concept of a four-way stop sign actually does a lot to actually slow cars down, knowing that they're not going to speed through an intersection. It will throttle traffic, but I think in the past, council's expressed the preference to prioritize pedestrian safety. So this is a good example where we can do that, that cars may be going slower at a four-way stop than trying to rush through a red light or trying to make the yellow, for example. So it's something that hopefully the CACT can further discuss. On Broad and Washington, the concern about the curb cut and the 1 month kind of delay with that. When are the signs going up? Did you mention that in your comments?
So the signs were ordered last week. I think they're due to arrive this week, and they'll go up as soon as we have them. They are a number of sandwich board signs, and then in addition, a sign that will be right there at the Kaiser Garage, welcoming people in after the 5 p.m. time frame.
Okay. It seems like people heading southbound on 29 is probably the most helpful because that's where you're not able to turn left into Park Place. So in the interim, while we wait for those, could we use the DPW big flashing boards? That might be a good solution that gets the word out before those signs arrive and can be installed.
Yes, we put in that. We need to get sort of the wording right, but we're coordinating that with the Department of Public Works right now.
Great. Thank you. That's all.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Shields. Just a couple of things that normally we might talk about in our Wednesday meeting, but we're trying to move through those meetings more quickly, so I just wanted to, for public information purposes, the festive lights that have been up on the street are in the process of coming down, and I just wanted to let the community know that there's a plan. You'll speak to that in the budget, as I understand it. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so what you see there now is on its way out, and it's a little ragtag now, but it'll be in the long run improved. Wayfinding signs, can you give us an update on? I think those are going up, right?
They are, and I apologize. I don't have the latest details on that. I do know that they're being installed right now, but in terms of the overall sort of installation plan, I'll look to Cindy Mester. I don't know, Cindy, if you know that schedule, but I don't know when they're all supposed to be up.
Yeah, I think we have 2 to 3 weeks for installations. We did hit a recent snag with some power line conflicts. So I know Mr. Bradley's having to work with the contractor to revise that. So we'll have to get more definitive information for follow-up.
Mr. Snyder has his hand up as well. Maybe he has some additional information.
Yeah, I believe they're going to start on this Wednesday, and hopefully we have good weather. We have a few that may need to get installed later, but all but 3 of them, I believe, are scheduled to go forward and be installed, with the 3 outliers that have some utility conflicts will be done at a later date.
Okay, thank you. One other thing that we talked about earlier, the VPAS letter, which noted the litter situation around town. I thought their points were well taken, and they'd asked for more attention to be given to the spring cleanup, which I think is May the 2nd. So just a note to make sure our communications efforts are redoubled for that event. I'm not sure it's as big a deal as it used to be back when my kids were younger. I feel like there's so many things going on in town that Saturday morning 2-hour slot doesn't get as many subscribers as it used to. I don't know if there's any other time slot that would be any better, but just building awareness of that activity is something that would be useful. Also wanted to ask you about any developments on the discussions with Mill Creek regarding the movie theater and the package of incentives that they'd requested.
Thank you, Councilmember Duncan. I don't have any kind of substantive update. I will just note that the work is underway, just to understand the facts of it. So a letter has gone to Mill Creek to ask them for a much fuller picture in terms of what we need in order to analyze their request. That's the status as of right now.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the mention of the assessments. That is a very much awaited announcement, so we look forward to that. As I understand what you said, there'll be a news release out this week, which will offer some of the information that people wants to know. Is that basically what you're aiming for?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Finally, the property yard event. Just want to make sure that gets on everybody's calendar. Is it next Tuesday that we're commemorating the Robert Goff property yard event? Is that when that happens?
That is correct. It is March 22nd at 1 p.m. And all are welcome, and we look forward to that. We'll unveil the new signs, that note that this is the Robert L. Goff Operations Yard, and we'll be very proud to do that.
Great. Okay. Much deserved. That'll be a nice celebratory event. And finally, while I have the mic, I just want to note that the mayor is speaking at tomorrow's Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Wyatt will miss that since he's out of town, but I hope all the other folks who are in town might come and listen to the mayor give his remarks and break bread with the Chamber of Commerce, the Italian Cafe, 11:30 tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. No heckling at the event, please. Mr. Snyder?
Thank you. I was planning to go and do just that, so.
That's why I said it.
Thank you,
I know you.
So I just want to follow up. We've all expressed our concerns with the Lincoln Park, Lincoln Avenue, the Dorchester area, so we'll be following up on that. Thank you. I know there's a lot of frustration on the inability of the city to put in electronic speed enforcement, and I have to note that is constantly in our legislative package, but the state of Virginia prohibits us absolutely prohibits us except under very limited circumstances. So I wanted you to know, in addition to using the circumstances that we have available, that we're constantly pushing for more authority to do just that, in addition to the other things that have been proposed. So thanks to all the citizens who have been here. The second issue I wanted to point out was Tinner Hill Park yesterday was the site of a First Amendment activity, and I want to say the whole purpose of that park was not only to celebrate the past, but to be a center for First Amendment activity and civil rights activity in the future. So we're very, very pleased to see that occur. So I think those are the two major things. One other element. The COG Transportation Planning Board has sent a survey around to the various members of TPB, which are all the jurisdictions in the region, about their efforts to deal with climate change through the transportation sector. And we're working with staff to provide the responses to that survey from the standpoint of the City of Falls Church. And if time permits, we'd like to brief City Council on the results of that survey. It's a very short time frame, due April 1, so we'll try to make sure that everyone's advised, and we're going to be obviously very ambitious in our efforts there. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Ms. Hiscott and then Ms. Hardy.
Just a couple of brief comments. Also, with the $400,000 grant that we discussed earlier, there was an additional grant giving us an ability to buy more electric school buses. I don't go through the school side of the budget, but there'll be an infrastructure for 6 charging stations, and I believe 3 buses total for 3 electric buses. So that's exciting news on climate change, environmental, and just working with our representative. Cindy's done a great job representing us through Mr. Byer. And I just want to be clear, secondly, on the communications about assessments and about tax rates. I'm assuming it'll reflect the range that we talked about last fall, so that we're not hamstringing ourselves because we haven't had any of the budget discussions yet. I think we had a 0 to 4 cents. So I just want to make sure that our communications say that, so that residents realize that there's a range that we discussed, and because we still have a lot of pieces missing on information to make a budget decision in totality. So I just want to confirm that that's what the communication that goes out says.
All right, Ms. Hardy.
Thanks. Mr. Snyder's comments about red light cameras reminded me of my last item. So it's good news, and thank you for continuing to push on expanding our use of cameras and using the speed cameras. Red light cameras, since we already have 2 installed in the city, does it require similar feasibility if we want to expand intersections, or is that really a city decision?
There is a required engineering report that has to be done per the regulations that have been laid out by the Commonwealth of Virginia. As Mr. Councilmember Snyder did note, the whole enterprise is highly regulated, and so we have to go through that whole process for any intersection that we'd want to consider for federal red.
I guess the way I want to make sure we are thinking about it is speed cameras, red light cameras, the traffic calming solutions, those are all kind of items within a toolbox. And so if we can't do a speed camera, perhaps we can do a red light camera. If we can't do that, we can think of another solution. Pretty much every day that I'm either walking or running in the city, I am in a crosswalk and I nearly get hit by a car running a red light. I think those infractions have certainly increased, and I think it's corroborated by a lot of the data that the chief shared. And so if we can't do speed cameras, then I would like to expand the use of the red light cameras, if not other solutions too. So I would ask that we push on all of those.
All right, thank you. Any additional comments? All right, let's move on to business on the agenda. Madam Clerk, will you call the first item?
Yes, on second reading and for public hearing, we have TO 22-02, ordinance to approve conveyance of Phase 1 of the 9.78 acre high school economic development parcel to the Falls Church Economic Development Authority and the condominium developer, in order that the property conveyances contemplated in the comprehensive agreement can be implemented.
All right, Ms. Messner, Mr. Shields.
I will, excuse me, I will go ahead and handle this item for now. This item is coming before you on second reading at this time because we began it fairly early in the process of wrapping up all these West End matters. And we did that because we had to go to the Planning Commission to get their approval for the disposition of property. So you gave this item first reading on February 14th. The Planning Commission recommended approval on February 16th, and it's now before you on second reading. However, if you see the proposed motion in the report, the staff is recommending that you open the public hearing, then the motion be to continue the public hearing to April 11th, 2022, and defer second reading to that time. And the reason we're doing that is because that is the schedule as it has shifted for all of the other West End items. They will all come before you on April 11th, and we will wrap everything up at that time. As the manager alluded to earlier, I will, during the work session portion of this meeting, go through a brief PowerPoint about how everything is, how all the items are fitting together. And I have a couple other staff reports, but that's why we're making this recommendation at this time. The one slight change we have made since first reading is at one time we were contemplating that the property would be all conveyed to the EDA, and then the EDA would convey one parcel to the residential condo developer. Cindy, can you get one of the attachments up? I think there's 2 copies of the same attachment, but just attachment 1, and we can see it. And instead of using the EDA to pass that property to them first, and then they pass it to the residential condo developer, we are going to, that will be conveyed directly from the city. So if we can, in a minute, we'll get the subdivision parcel that shows you where these pieces are. So that adjustment has been made. That adjustment was made in what was advertised. And other than that, it is, I guess, the same item. You need to go back to it's the attachment in it's separate item that's an attachment, the separate document. Anyway, we can see it now if we can wait. It is the general subdivision of the parcel, which the main piece of it, the 7.6 acre piece, is what's going to go to the EDA. And then there's a small, approximately 1 acre piece that's going to be used for the residential condo building. We will see that later tonight on at least one occasion. So if we can't see it right now, you will get a look at it. There it is. That's the new subdivision of the parcel. And if we can make it maybe a little bit bigger, but that big parcel in the middle there, which is called D2, this subdivision was approved by the Planning Commission on February 16th. It has not yet been recorded in the land records, but parcel D2 is what you would approve to be conveyed to the EDA, and parcel D4 in the upper left-hand corner is what is going to be used for the Phase 1 residential condo building, and that parcel will be conveyed in fee simple, not through a lease, but in fee simple to a residential condo developer. That's the ordinance that is before you. And for tonight, as I said, we recommend that you open the public hearing, and then if there are any speakers, hear them, then continue the public hearing and schedule second reading for April 11th. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. As I said, we'll go through more of this and more of the comprehensive arrangements later.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? I think the public hearing has already been opened, and so I'll ask if any member of the public wants to speak. Seeing none, the matter is closed to the public. Are there any council comments or questions? We are going to be hearing more about this. We do have a work session after this regular meeting, so despite the fact we're going to get through some things we normally signal the end of our meeting, we do have a work session on these same matters later this evening, so there will be an opportunity to speak to this and other matters. So unless we have any comments needed right now, do we have a motion that anyone would like to make regarding this matter?
Move to continue public hearing on TO 22-02 to April 11th, 2022, and defer second reading to that time.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Leon on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Hardy,
Yes.
Ms. Leon,
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscod,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mayor Charter.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's keep going. Let's see what's next on the agenda.
We're on to consent items.
Consent items. So does anyone have anything they'd like to pull off the consent agenda? We did speak to these matters as we've been doing at the work session previously, so we should have addressed all of these at an earlier meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mayor, move the consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Snyder on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Hardy,
Yes.
Ms. Leon,
Yes.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
and Mayor Charter.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
All right, so now we're going to change gears just a bit and move on to the work session. So the work session is on the 10 acres, some of the mechanics and technical matters relating to that. And so I guess I'll turn it back over to Ms. McCroskey.
Yes. So I have what I'm going to do is go over a brief PowerPoint that kind of outlines what all the matters are that are going to be happening over the next few weeks to close the transactions in the comprehensive agreement. The important things are, these are just the next steps that they're part of the process we've been working on now for a couple years. And there isn't any change as part of these to the comprehensive agreement plan. This is simply carrying out the next big step in the process that was set forth in that agreement. So if we can, next slide. And can you just go to the subdivision? So this is a little bit of background on the subdivision, and you can see this is the same drawing we saw a minute ago. There are 4 parcels are created. D2, the big one, will go to the EDA, who will lease that out under the comprehensive agreement because they can enter into longer-term leases. D4 in the upper left-hand corner is the residential condo piece. And then D3 and D5, which are the other 2 pieces, one in the lower left corner, one in the upper right corner. Those parcels ultimately are being reserved for phase 2 of the development, which doesn't happen for several more years. I will get to, in a few minutes, what happens with them right now, because there will be some temporary uses of them. So if you can go back, just click on subdivision. And then the second thing is, if we can go to the approximately 13 commercial condo lots will be created. This drawing is a little bit harder to see, and we don't have the final condominium divisions all outlined for us yet. That is being worked on, and we should get that soon. But if you look at this, what this picture shows is you can see lot numbers on each of the squares. And so sometimes, for instance, on B3, it has commercial master condominium lot 7. And so that parcel would be one lot. But if you look at B1, it is CMLC lots 3 and 4. So that condo lot might include, those condo lots might include a lot for the parking or for the retail and for, I guess that's going to be the office. So that's probably parking, one lot for parking, one for the office, and those would be separately leased to different parties as part of the ultimate transaction. There are a total of approximately 13 lots. You can see lot 14 in the middle, that's the yellow area. And as you can see, it sort of runs throughout the site. That's the public areas and the streets. They will probably create a lot, but that will not be conveyed at all. That will simply remain in the ownership of the EDA.
So we have a question or two,
Sure.
maybe we could pause. Ms.
Just
Conley?
real quick, I've never heard the term condo lot before. Can you
well-
explain that? Because
And I may not be using it precisely, but they call it a commercial land condominium. So they will divide the property. It will be, each of these individual lots will get a tax map number, but they will not be subdivided through our subdivision process, but they will be separately leased.
but they will be owned. The
They will be-
residential condo lots will be owned.
Only the residential condo lot will be owned, and you can see it is parcel C1 in the upper left-hand corner. It's not subject to the commercial lot condominium. That piece will have been fee conveyed to the residential condo developer. The rest of the parcels, the EDA will remain as the owner of the underlying fee, and there will be leases for the condo pieces out to various developers who will develop them. Does that help?
So to my mind, just to follow up on that question, I personally have not experienced, quote, condominium, technical legal condominiums on a ground lease property, and typically it's done in
Okay.
fee. And so I guess, just in furtherance of that comment, I'd want to confirm that that's the right terminology and just sort of, it seems
Okay.
to me like it's really just a portion of the ground leased area as being the kind of sub-conveyed, but really it's just the conveyance of a ground lease, like a sublease of that portion.
Yes.
Sounds more likely, technically, that's what's
Yes.
happening.
But there is a creation of the commercial master land condominium. And what I will do is, this matter, the next item that will come before you will be on March 28th, so I will get you some more update on that specifics.
It seems like this is more of a sublease of the ground lease parcel as opposed to, quote, a condominium, but I guess I just want to make sure we all understand and are in
right.
agreement with what's occurring.
Yeah, they will not be subleased because they're being leased out to individual owners who may be various entities of FCGP who have been created to hold these leases and manage the property and develop the property. So there will not be subleases, but the property will be conveyed to the EDA, and then they will create these condominiums that will then be leased, and the subdivision to the condominiums will be leased out to individual property owner, or property lessors who will hold them.
So again, I'm not
Lessees.
familiar with condominiumization of ground lease
Okay.
property. I think it's a very uncommon circumstance, at least in my experience it is. But just, I guess I would just say, just confirm
We
both
will
the
confirm that,
terminology
and we'll,
and the
yeah.
underlying legal principles of what's occurring.
Yep.
So that we're all on the same sheet of music.
Yeah.
Ms. Hardy?
I have a math question. So in the staff report, I think it's lines 48 or so, we are conveying 7.6 acres to the EDA, 1.06 acres, which is the condo parcel, to the
Right.
developer. Is the remaining, because 1 point some acres, the phase two?
Yes.
Because that does not add up to 9.7.
That's
or-
correct.
Okay.
That's correct, because the pieces D3 and D5 on the subdivision map those areas are not being leased to the developer at this time. They are Phase 2.
Got it. I think it'd be helpful to spell that out for various reasons. The
Okay.
remaining acres are here and they're not being conveyed.
Okay, so they are, when we looked back at the subdivision, we can go back, they are what's shown on this lot or on this drawing in gray, the lower left-hand corner B4, that's Phase 2, and the upper right-hand corner D3, that's also Phase 2. I will go through. B4 is where part of the school board's parking lot sits. There's a little bit of area that is along the street that is sidewalk and will be needed to be developed by the developer for the infrastructure. But the rest of that, we will be bringing you a lease to the school board to use it for their parking lot. And then as part of the upcoming transactions, D3 in the upper right corner, the developer will be given a access easement over that parcel to use during construction for ingress and egress and some parking. Ms. Conley?
So is that B4 parking lot that will be for the school board, is that the possible parking garage?
Yes, but
Yes.
not until Phase 2.
So phase 2?
Correct.
So right now it stays,
Right now,
As
it's,
is.
right, and that's, the schools will continue to use that until the Phase 2 closing. They'll continue to use that as their parking lot.
so then we'll do something else like this when we get to phase 2 specifically for
Correct.
that
The
fund.
lease that we will give to the school board will end upon the Phase 2 closing, and then when we get ready for the Phase 2 closing, you will have further information about what's going to happen with those properties.
Thanks.
So someone looks like they have their hand up, although I'm not able to discern who it is because I don't have access to the screen. Is there someone who has their hand up? Or Mr. Snyder? Okay. All right, let's keep moving.
Okay. So if we can go back to the PowerPoint. All right, so there's two main parts to the transaction. There's going to be the land transaction, which we've talked some about already, and then the CDA and the bond issuance, which will help finance some of the infrastructure. So as part of the land transaction for Phase 1, the city conveys the residential condo parcel, which is D4 in fee to the developer. And some of those areas in D4, which is conveyed in fee, will come back to there will be easements back to the city to allow for some streets over that area. And that will be done as part of the documents at closing. Also, the city will convey the parcel to be, D4 is the residential condo property. So D4 is the little one in the upper left-hand corner, and it will be granted to the in fee to the residential condo. And then B, the city conveys the parcel to be ground leased to the EDA. That's D2, the 7.6 acre parcel. I do want to mention that we also have a memorandum of agreement, and there's a separate staff report on this that is in the package, but I think it might be useful if I just go briefly through at this time what's in the memorandum of agreement. This is an agreement that will be between the city and the EDA, and it's the agreement that talks about how the relationship between the two will be handled as the EDA holds the fee interest in the property. What it says essentially, it's a fairly informal and short agreement, but it says that the property is being conveyed to the EDA solely for the EDA to carry out the comprehensive agreement transactions. It also provides for the city manager and the staff to work with the EDA to carry out the transactions and the management of the property. It also provides that any payments under the leases, and this will also go in the formal documents, any payments under the leases on the property will be remitted to the city, not some other way to the EDA. And then it also provides for cooperation between the parties, and there's a paragraph or two about some how a dispute might be resolved by discussion between the city manager and the EDA chair, or the mayor and the chair. So that's essentially what that agreement is going to provide. It is in your packet, so you can read through it, and it will come to the EDA and to you for final approval.
So with
Then-
respect to that
Yes.
MOU, the MOU doesn't go to record, and so
Correct.
people don't have notice of that. Third parties don't have notice of that. Is there going to be any mention in the deed that this is subject to a separate, memorandum of understanding to basically give notice to third parties as well?
I believe that is, where that is it's already in the comprehensive agreement, that the city can, that the city will be able to have its transactions carried out by the EDA, and that the property can be transferred to them.
No, so what I'm talking about is just the restrictions that are on the EDA's ownership. In other words, they don't really have an
Right.
unfettered right to convey or not want to do something city council wants to do, I think having a reference in the deed of conveyance,
Okay.
because that's something that's permanent 89 years from now, and no one's going to know
Right.
where this MOU is, but they, at least having a reference in the land records, I think would strengthen that understanding.
All right.
Not necessarily the full MOU, but just a reference to it.
Right, right.
Anyway, just a thought. Okay, other
Okay.
comments, or you want to keep on rolling? Go ahead.
I will keep on going if, yes.
Yes?
So, one question. I'm looking at the SEMOA on page 204, line 3.
Okay.
I thought I heard that we're transferring, the city would transfer the lease site to the FCEDA. That is not fee simple, but you're referencing fee simple.
No, that's not correct. The transfer to the EDA is in fee simple. And then the EDA's transfer, because the city was not able to enter into the long-term leases that are necessary for the financing of the project. And therefore, the city's going to transfer the property in fee to the EDA, who will then lease it out to the developer, because the EDA has authority to enter into longer-term leases. I may have misspoken at some point, but that's,
I'm clear.
the EDA will get the property in fee simple. And the residential condo owner will also get the property in fee simple. They both get it from the city, but then the EDA will be acting as essentially the city under the terms of the comprehensive agreement to enter into the leases and all that, whereas the transfer to the residential condo owner will be a decision that's not, it's not part of the city working on it. It's really turning over that parcel to the condominium owner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay?
Proceed.
So then, once the parcel has been conveyed to the EDA will enter into leases and related documents. And Cindy, if you can just click for a minute, obviously this list of closing documents is fairly comprehensive. It has a brief blurb about what they all are. We will get the documents themselves as well as these blurbs posted so that you'll be able to look at them. But if we can go back, if you just click back on closing documents, but that's out there so that you can look and see what all the documents are and have a brief information about them. There will be ground leases. What we have now really is a form of ground lease, and there will be specifics added to them, but the form will be used for all of the leases. There's a declaration of covenants, conditions, easements, and restrictions, actually, which will cover the interrelationships between all the parties on the property. It creates a development association that will be sort of representative of the development-wide property owners, and it also has the development association with responsibility for the maintenance of the streets and the public areas. It's a 150-page document, so it's very complex and long, but it is the document that it's extremely important because it provides for all the relationships between the various parties.
So the CCRs, do they have any obligations to the EDA? I mean, are they just signing essentially as, quote, the owner? Or are there actually any obligations to the EDA underneath the covenants, conditions, and restrictions?
I think the question was, does the EDA have responsibilities?
Yes.
They do not. They will be a party to
Because
the
they own
CCR, but they are going to be specifically exempted from any obligations to pay or anything like that.
Yeah, make sure that's really clear. Just
Yes.
someplace at the end, they're signing merely as the owner and not.
Right.
They have no obligations,
Right.
nothing, and are indemnified,
Yes.
presume as well.
Yep.
So, all right.
Okay. And then the construction covenant is a somewhat similar document that operates during the period of actual construction. But it helps all the parties be able to have easements to go across other properties, et cetera. And then finally, and these are just some of the more critical documents, but there will be guarantees provided by high net worth individuals for both the horizontal construction as well as vertical construction, meaning any of the individual buildings that get built. The horizontal construction will be all this first thing that we're doing, which is all the infrastructure and creating the getting the property ready for the buildings to be built. Then phase 2, as I mentioned, we had D3 and D5, the parcels in the corner, lower left and upper right, which are going to be phase 2 properties, but they will be used during this. I think I already mentioned this. There'll be an access easement over D5 to allow the developer ingress and egress over the parcel and to park on it. That's the one that's up on Haycock Road. And then the lease of most of D3 to the school board for its parking lot, which is already there and which it's already using. Next slide. So then the second half of the transaction is going to be the CDA bond issue. There will be bond resolutions to be approved by both the CDA and the City Council. They're nearly identical. They authorize the issuance and sale of the bonds, and they also approve a number of documents. And again, there's a link here to a list of documents with a short blurb about each, which I won't go through all of them, but one thing that I will note is that when you have a transaction or a bond issue like this one, which is not a general obligation bond, there are lots more documents than there are when you do a normal city bond issue, because the city bond issue doesn't have to provide for what money gets used for it, because the city has an obligation to use its tax revenues to pay for the bonds. And in this case, they do not. In this case, the special assessment is applied, and it's only money that comes in from the special assessment that's available to pay the debt service and expenses on the bonds. So if we can go back, if you click on the list, that again, these documents and that list will be posted, and we will let you all know so that you can look at them at any time. And I can be available to talk about questions, and we can bring in our outside counsel at any time to help answer the questions. So when this comes back to you, the CDA will already have approved its bond resolution. That'll be very similar to what you would approve, that authorizes the execution of the documents and the sale of the bonds. I also have separately noted here the special assessment ordinance that is going to come before you. We are scheduling first reading for March 28th. That is the ordinance by which you authorize the special assessment that's going to pay for the bonds. As you can see, it has these 4 elements. It imposes a special assessment and authorizes related administrative actions, things like delinquency proceedings and things like that. It authorizes a special tax in circumstances where the special assessment can't be imposed because it's either declared to be illegal or when it can be imposed and it's been determined to be insufficient. We do not expect that that's going to happen, but we have that backup mechanism to use a special tax on the property if the special assessment was ever insufficient. The ordinance would also make the special assessments a lien on taxable property in the West Falls District and authorizes the delinquency proceedings where they are needed. So if we go to the next slide, I've sort of outlined the schedule. This is where we're headed with things. We started February 14th. You did the first reading for the conveyance ordinance. February 16th, the Planning Commission approved the conveyance ordinance and approved the subdivision. And then we've had a preliminary meeting on March 8th with the CDA. They approved a confidentiality agreement, and they got an introduction to some of these matters. Then tonight, we're having this preview for council, and we've continued the public hearing and deferred the ordinance for conveyance to April 11th. On March 28th, we will bring to you a first reading of the special assessment ordinance, and you already have in your packet tonight a staff report on that matter. Then the CDA meeting is being scheduled. So I don't have a final date for it. I expect now it's going to be April 6th, but we haven't gotten that finally settled. And they will approve the bond resolution, which also authorizes their officers to sign all the bond documents. On April 5th, the EDA will meet to accept the property and approve the MOA and authorize their chair to execute the land closing documents. Then everything is coming back to you for final action, final consideration on April 11th. You'll consider the conveyance to the EDA and the residential condo developer. That ordinance will be there for second reading. You'll also consider the memorandum of agreement with the EDA, the second reading of the special assessment ordinance, and you will be asked to approve the bond resolution based in part on what the CDA did with its bond resolution. The closing on the land among the parties, which is not something that you all will be directly involved in, but it'll be the final signing of the documents, is currently expected to be on April 25th. And then once that happens, some of the public disclosure about the bond documents can be issued, and it's expected that in late May or early June, we would have final closing and issuance of the CDA bonds. So that's sort of a lot of stuff. And as I said, we will put the documents out there, but if there are any questions, if there's anything I can try to straighten out for you, please let me know.
All right, so Ms. Hardy had a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol. So I'm going to be frank here. I don't even know what the right questions to ask you are.
Okay.
Not all of us are land use or bond attorneys, and so I'm going to be completely honest. I don't even know where this might be different than other land transactions. And so what I think would be really helpful for me personally is to understand where this may be different, what the risks are, because it is a little different, and then if there are differences in risks, what are we doing to mitigate against those or protect the city, in layman's terms?
Okay. So I think, and I will just say, in part, one of the main things we're doing to mitigate the risk is when we lease the property at closing, there will have to be guarantees from high net worth individuals that the development will be completed.
Dave Snyder?
Yeah. But we will have those guarantees, and I think this is not a usual transaction for the city at all. It's not the kind of thing that you see, but it's not that unusual, I think, in terms of a large development deal. The people that we're working with on this have done lots of these, but there will be those guarantees. The city has and it'll be the EDA will have the right to foreclose on leases if amounts are not paid. But one of the other things that comes up is when we get to closing, the developer will have to have financing for all of the projects. And they've been working very hard at getting that. And the entities that are financing their work are the ones, that are financing their projects are going to be certain that they have enforcement mechanisms to make sure this all happens. So we don't get 100% guarantees. What we have done is put a lot of time working into the documents so that we have the ability to get the project completed as requested or to foreclose. We have I will say, I think that we have as much of a guarantee as we're going to be able to get. Payments have begun coming in at the end of this past year. We did not get the entire payment because closing will not be until, when closing happens, we'll get the rest. We had 1.8 million at the end of last year, and we will get the additional 450,000 when we have this closing. There will be at the end of each year, every 6 months, then we will have payments of 2.25 million for the next few years through 2005 under the comprehensive agreement. But I think that right now, as the developer gets financing and some of the parcels have already have entities that are planning to construct them, that is, I guess, as much guarantee as we're going to get, that they have financing in place at the closing.
Okay. In terms of the legal transaction itself, I'm hearing you say that while this is very unusual for the city, that it is not that unusual compared to how it's done elsewhere.
I think that's true for large development projects. It's not that unusual. It's not as large as many would be. And we can certainly bring in our outside attorneys who have done lots of these over the years. I mean, this is similar to how Mosaic was done, how the Wharf was done. These are the other projects that our parties have recently done that have similar types of mechanisms within them.
Yeah, no, I trust you, and I trust kind of the outside counsel we brought in, but I'm hearing you say that there are no red flags we should be concerned about based on how this has been done elsewhere. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Other comments, Ms. Leon?
I just have to ask, just on the complexity of this. So, just some safeguards and checks and balances. Have we, in projects that are like this, are we leveraging any mechanism or any remedies specifically for any false representation, or is that structured anywhere in this? So there's reps, there's warrants, right? There's covenants. Reps are in the past, warrants are in the future, and then the covenants are more specific to to executing things.
Mm-hmm.
So, from a warrant perspective, is there any remedy for any false representation that would be a best practice to pull in here?
I'm not sure I completely understand your question, but I think what you're asking is if something fell apart, does the city have protection for its reputation? I would like to talk with our outside counsel before answering that, because I'm just not certain where that would fall. I'm not aware of direct protection for that, but my guess is that it is built into the entire structure.
Okay.
And so we can get back with you on that.
And the second question is, you've got the EDA that's handing out the ground leases, right? So
correct.
When we take a look at that, is there a way for the city to be involved in making sure that we're understanding, kind of min-maxes, market value min-maxes that drive what that ground lease should be, right? So
The ground leases that are being entered into were negotiated by the city. And they've been negotiated as part of the terms under the comprehensive agreement. So there's not currently, there will be no change to the amounts that are required to be paid under the comprehensive agreement. So it isn't that we're setting rental amounts. We will be.
So when that developer is able to charge higher for that ground lease that's in the comprehensive agreement, which will happen in 99 years, where is that delta? Like, do we have a mechanism to do some sharing on that, or?
There are a number of provisions in the comprehensive agreement that there are additional payments built in. It might be better for us to sit down and go through those things. There are a couple of different ways that the comprehensive agreement is structured to capture increases in value.
Oh, that's good.
But to some degree, it was also the amounts were set at the time of entering into the comprehensive agreement. And, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
So we've looked at this a lot of different ways from a financial standpoint.
Mhm.
Have we looked at it from a standpoint of liability risk management? In other words, what if something goes really wrong during the construction? Or what if a building that's built falls down? Since we're still the owner, since it's a lease and not a fee simple, and you have the EDA, so have we had a risk manager take a look at that side of it? Not financial risk, well, I guess ultimately it
Right.
is, but liability risk.
Well, I think that is, certainly, there is indemnification requirements built into all of the documents for all of the construction and the operation. And we have relied on our outside attorneys to make sure that that is, I mean, I've certainly read through the documents to make sure that's in there where it needs to be. And our outside attorneys, who have a great deal of experience putting together documents for real estate deals like this, have also been working on that. So we haven't turned it over to a separate independent risk manager, but that is the purpose of the outside attorney at Aaron Fox, who's doing most of the document drafting, is to ensure that these types of provisions are in there.
And so I presume we're also additional insureds, named as additional
Yes.
insureds? Okay. And have sovereign immunity over some aspects, although maybe not
Correct.
all of them. Okay, do you have more presentation? Looks like we're only about a third of the way through. Are we done?
Well, no, actually, I do not, the only other things that I can go into, if you think it's helpful, is the special assessment ordinance. I have already outlined most of what is in there. That will come to you on March 28th for first reading. So we can talk about that again then. And the memorandum of agreement that is with the EDA, that you have that in your packet. So there are 2 staff reports in the items that would that are available to you to read. If you'd like me to go through them in a little more detail about what those 2 items will be, please let me know, although I feel like maybe we've thrown out too much already.
Does anyone have a desire to hear those now? It sounds like we're going to be hearing them in the near future.
You will, yeah.
Okay. Okay, I think that sounds like pretty good.
All right.
To me at least, unless anyone's got any further questions. I guess I would say thank you for your fine work and
Yeah.
look forward to hearing more back.
And I am available if you think of questions and want to just give me a call. If I will try to get responses out to all of council so everybody hears it.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's keep moving then. How about business not on the agenda? Is there any, let me just see exactly. Okay, yeah, any business not on the agenda or any standing regional committee or council liaison reports anyone would like to make at this time? Yes, Ms. Connolly.
There's a Budget and Finance Committee meeting this Friday morning at 9 a.m.
All right, sounds good. Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, Cindy, when's the next legislative committee session?
This Wednesday, 9 a.m., immediately following the mayor's agenda scheduling meeting. Separate link, however.
Okay, so we're really kind of in the middle of legislative developments. We've gone through the regular session, but there'll be a special session for the budget, so a lot of issues that are relevant to the city have not really been decided at this point.
And since there was no budget, we are definitely in the middle of sort of limbo land until they schedule a special session.
We certainly appreciate all the work done for us by our delegate and senator. Thank you. And Cindy, especially, thank you.
Certainly.
All right. Ms. Sardi?
The Appointments Committee interviewed a bunch of great candidates for the new, whatever we call it, bring back together the Public Utilities Commission. So I think once we approve those in the next few weeks, then the Public Utilities Commission should be ready to meet.
All right, other comments? Okay, sounds good. Any other council member comments? How about approval of the minutes? Mr. Duncan?
For the minutes of the Monday, February 14th meeting, line 104 should be and, not and. Other than that, I didn't see anything else. Anybody else have anything?
I sent Ms. Heath one misspelling to correct in there. I'm not sure. I think that was February 14th also.
I think that
Or it was
was on the
January
24th, it was Ms. Segura's.
Kira.
I
Yes.
fixed it
Okay.
exactly as you sent it to me. Thank you for that.
All right, so do we have a motion
And
regarding?
so for the meeting minutes for January 24th, 2022, both times we reference in the budget disclaimer that at line 120 and 128, your standard, Celeste, seems to be, I can participate in it fairly objectively and in the public interest. But I don't think that's what you really mean to say. It should, I can participate in it fairly, objectively, and in the public interest. Am I right?
Yes, Ms. Attorney? I will add a comma.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Same thing for 120 and 128. So with those corrections, I move approval of the minutes of January 24th, 2022, and February 14th, 2022.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
On both of those minutes?
Who was the second?
Ms. Conley?
Oh, thank you.
All right, do you want to do this by voice vote or roll?
Voice is fine.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it.
Thank
Any
you.
final words before we adjourn it?
Is budget finance virtual or in building?
Oh, it's virtual.
Okay, and you said 9 o'clock?
It's 9 o'clock.
And the legislative committee, I've seen 9:30 and 9, but I think we moved it to 9. Is that correct, Cindy?
Changed it to 9, and
Okay.
it will be virtual as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I know this is unnaturally early for us to end a meeting, and I don't know what to do about it. But otherwise, let's adjourn. And yes, exactly. We'll make up for it later. Don't
I'll
worry.
go to Harvey's before they close up. Hey.
All right. So let's go ahead. Let's call it, everybody.
Thank you, council. Good night.
Thank you, council.
Quiet. Have a good trip.